Shalom, family. Good to see everyone here. Hope you're doing well. This is the final day that the hair growth shampoo is on sale for 20%, 25% off. So you have from now until 11:59 p.m. tonight to grab up your hair growth shampoo while it lasts. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, just before I came on here, the Ayatollah son that just stepped in for the other supreme leader has been injured. So I don't know how bad his injury, but yes, it's from an airstrike. So this is the son of the Ayatollah that was appointed to take his spot. He has been injured. So I was looking at some of it on some of the foreign news site. They're reporting it, but they don't know how bad it is or if he's even still alive. But I'm sure more will come out over the next few hours. So, anyway, y'all, we're going to talk about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is trying to use the FBI and trying to get in the middle of these different election sites in 15 different states. Donald Trump knows at this point, especially with this Iran war that he just started, that it lessens the chance of the Republicans winning. A lot of people, and you saw the approval out here, most Americans do not agree with this war. And he knows it. And, just like if Donald Trump is still around in 2028, he's not leaving the White House. He's going to do everything he can not to leave. So the midterms are really important to the Republicans as far as retaining control of the House and the Senate. So, yeah, a lot of people feel that what Donald Trump is trying to do is steal the midterm elections. And, Donald Trump is a 34 convicted felon, so you can't put anything past him. Not a thing. So, and we already see that Congress and the Senate are not going to do anything to Donald Trump. They wouldn't even do anything to him when he jumped this war off. They let him go right ahead and have all the power he wants. And we see how that has turned out. So now, this thing with the election, this is another thing. So this man is determined to keep his party at the top and in power at all cost. And we shall see how it goes. At this point, Donald Trump literally can get away with anything. He seems to seriously be Teflon Don for real. And they're letting him do it. Please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Thank you.
He is not joking, folks. He is not joking. I am literally hearing people in 2026 saying, "Oh, maybe Trump is doing this or saying this because he's joking." He is not joking. This is the goal. This is the game. A lot of people just assume that when Trump is no longer here in the land of the breathing, that everything will be fine, will be fixed. This is way beyond Trump. Trump is a figurehead that is getting things done. He is putting the items in place to ensure that this type of regime, these policies will stay in place long after him. Do you really think that they've been going through all this with the Heritage Foundation, Peter Thiel, all of these people have been working for 20, 30, 40, 50 years to get these policies in place, to get Roe overturned, to get the Supreme Court the way it is, that they're going to risk a Democrat majority coming in and undoing it? This is the goal. This has always been the goal. This has always been the long game. No more elections.
Okay, let's go.
This crucial midterm election year, and with Republicans holding very slim majorities in the House and the Senate, ABC News has now learned President Trump has reviewed a draft executive order that would involve him declaring a national emergency, potentially giving him sweeping power over voting in this country. So let's get right to Mary Bruce tonight. She's live at the White House. Mary, what have you learned?
Well, David, with the midterms now fast approaching and with Republicans holding those small majorities in Congress tonight, we have learned that President Trump has reviewed this draft executive order urging him to declare a national emergency that would give him broad power over voting. Sources say a group of pro-Trump attorneys are circulating a draft claiming without evidence that China interfered in the 2020 election, arguing that would justify declaring a national emergency that would then allow the president to mandate voter ID, hand-counted ballots, and ban mail-in ballots. Now, it is not clear if the president is going to accept this proposal, but we do know that he is considering executive action to impose stricter voting rules. But, David, the Constitution gives states, not the federal government, the power to run elections.
All right, Mary, you'll continue to watch this for sure. Thank you. Now,
Our government is lying to us about what they're doing. This is a police state in Minnesota, and they want to take this police state all over. And you know what they want to do? Do you know what they want to do? They want to take over the elections in certain places to guarantee a win in 2026 for the Republicans so Donald Trump can stay in office and stay his ass out of jail. That's what they want. You don't believe me? Listen closely.
The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
Did you hear that? The Republicans should take over and they should nationalize the voting. Nationalize the voting. Are you guys awake yet? Are you paying attention? Why do you think that they don't want free and independent journalists? They don't want the word out. Why do you think that they are jailing journalists? Because they don't want people telling that story. And the people who are the closest to the ground experiencing this are independent journalists who are there covering it.
Trump adding, quote, we should take over the voting in 15 places. I mean, just yesterday, Donald Trump was complaining about winning more states in 2020 on the podcast of his former FBI number 2, Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino, who hated his job, apparently actually doing like government work and now wants to go back to podcasting. Trump adding, quote, we should take over the voting in 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. Now, that, of course, is illegal. It's a violation of all sorts of state federal statutes and constitutional principles of federalism. But today, of course, Trump just doubled down.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections? And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta, look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Egg Report. I'm your host and friend, Greg Perkins. Let's get to it. Guys, now Trump is trying to federalize. He wants the federal government to run our elections. Okay, it clearly states in Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 of the Constitution that states have this right. Trump, you keep going back to the 2020 election. Bro, you are the president. Are you delusional? You lost that race 3 times. Georgia is a red state. They counted the vote 3 times and you lost 3 times, like you are going to lose this year in the midterm election. You are going to lose again. Okay, guys, Trump is going to try to intimidate people in the 2026 elections. Please call, double check your voter registration status to make sure you are registered properly, because they are going to come after you. Make no mistake about it. And Democrats, I hope you are prepared at the federal, state, and local level to stop this, okay? He cannot do it. And Trump, you can propose it. Republicans in Congress, they can propose it. And as a matter of fact, I dare you to do it. I dare you to try to make the elections federal. Go ahead, Trump. Do it. Guys, today's hashtag is to double check your voter registration status. Hashtag double check your voter registration status. Everybody have an awesome day.
The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
Donald Trump said something yesterday. I want my own party to control elections in America. Not fair elections, not secure elections. My own party. He said that out loud on camera. And when reporters asked him to clarify, he doubled down. If a state can't run an election, the people behind me should do something about it.
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it.
Translation: if I lose, I'll take over.
This is more dangerous autocratic poison from Donald Trump.
And you might think, okay, but that's just Trump talking, except he's already doing it. Last week, his director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, showed up in Georgia while the FBI raided the Fulton County election office. They were seizing ballots from 2020, and Gabbard was there in person. When asked why the director of national intelligence is collecting ballots in Georgia, the White House said she's overseeing election security.
Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and the security of our American elections.
So the woman in charge of protecting America from foreign threats is now seizing ballots in a state Trump lost. And here's the best part. A whistleblower filed a complaint against her 8 months ago.
So back in April, our client filed a disclosure with the Intelligence Committee Inspector General.
By law, that complaint goes to Congress, but it hasn't, because the person responsible for sending it, Tulsi Gabbard, she's blocking the whistleblower complaint about herself. So Trump says he wants his party to control elections. His DNI seizes ballots in a swing state. A whistleblower tries to expose her. She blocks it. This isn't a plan. It's already happening. Here's how this works. Step 1, claim elections are rigged. No proof required. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, explained the philosophy perfectly. It looks fraudulent. Can I prove that? No.
It looks on its face to be fraudulent. Can I prove that? No.
Let that sit for a second. The Speaker of the House, third in line to the presidency, admits he has zero evidence of election fraud, and he's pushing it anyway because the proof doesn't matter. The accusation does. Step 2, put the arsonist in charge of the fire department. Meet Heather Honey. Zero election experience. Spent the last 4 years spreading debunked fraud claims on right-wing media. Her job now? Deputy Assistant Secretary for Election Integrity at the Department of Homeland Security. She's literally in charge of protecting elections, and she got the job because she spent years lying about them.
A conspiracy theorist with absolutely zero knowledge of how to actually run elections, aside from spreading completely fabricated lies about the outcome in the past, is currently in charge of helping to oversee our election infrastructure.
That's not incompetence. That's the point. Step 3, target swing states, seize ballots. Call it transparency. Georgia just got raided. Gabbard showed up in person. Pennsylvania, Trump already named them. Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin. Every state he lost is now a target. And here's what that looks like on the ground. November 2026. A Democrat wins a House race in Pennsylvania by 1 through 200 votes. Trump tweets, rigged, everyone knows it. 2 weeks later, federal agents show up at the county election office. No warrant made public. No explanation of what crime they're investigating. They seize the ballots. The Democrat who won, now under investigation. The poll workers who counted the votes, subpoenaed. The Secretary of State who certified the results, targeted by the DOJ. And 6 months later, after the investigation, they'll say, we found irregularities. The election can't be certified. That's not hypothetical. That's the system they're building. Because here's the thing. Trump doesn't need to prove fraud. He just needs to create enough doubt that his party can justify overturning results. Gabbard seizes the ballots. Honey runs the investigation. Johnson says it looks fraudulent. And suddenly, the election Trump's candidate lost gets thrown out, not because of evidence, because they control the process. You don't destroy democracy in one dramatic coup. You do it slowly. One ballot seizure at a time, one investigation at a time, one integrity justification at a time. Trump said it out loud, I want my own party to control elections. Tulsi Gabbard is seizing ballots in swing states. Heather Honey, an election denier, is running election security. Mike Johnson admits there's no proof, but he's spreading the lie anyway. This isn't a warning. It's already here.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections? And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta, look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
The Constitution says it should be states that administer elections, Mr. President.
Yeah,
That's what the
you know
Constitution
what?
says.
They can administer the election, but they have to do it honestly.
Howdy, fellas. Let's talk about the midterm elections and what Donald Trump has said about them in the last couple of weeks. So his numbers are tanking. A lot of people are not happy with the economy, not happy with what's going on with ICE and a whole bunch of different things. And it's looking like they are possibly going to favor the Democrats in the midterm elections for Congress coming up in November of this year. So what he said about this process, well, a direct quote is that Republicans need to take over the elections. That is a direct quote he said, as well as numerous times mentioning that they need to, quote unquote, nationalize the elections because elections are overseen traditionally by the Constitution, by state secretaries of state. Now, why is this scary? This is first level dictator shit. And if you look at some of the other folks that have become basically dictators and what academics call authoritarian states, Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey and Viktor Orban in Hungary, this is the sort of thing that they do. Orban has nationalized the elections and changed the rules so that his party gets favored in pretty much every election. And he wins these super majorities, even though the polling in the country shows that he's got a sizable amount of folks that don't like him. The next thing that they do is try to nationalize the media. And this is why Trump's allies buying out the Washington Post, buying out CBS News, things like that are going down that road as well. So Orban and Erdogan basically control like 95% of what people see during an election cycle. So their opposition doesn't really get a lot of time to get their message out. And that helps them win elections as well. The next stage of that is what Vladimir Putin does in Russia, which is basically get rid of term limits. And then he starts jailing his opponents. And in the case of the last guy, that was his real opposition leader, Navalny, he ended up dying in prison after being poisoned, probably by the KGB. And then the last stage is basically just having elections but ignoring them. So the guy Maduro that Trump just got from Colombia, he in the last election just lost and he just said, screw it, I don't care, I have the guys with the guns. So as we look at what's going on with elections, one of the things that makes America great is our freedom to choose our leaders and hold them in check every couple of years. And if we don't have that, we start moving down the road to these other countries, the way they've gone, where you just have one guy in charge, which is frankly the most anti-American thing ever, because that's what it we fought the fucking Revolutionary War about to get rid of. Just some thoughts. Appreciate y'all. Have a good weekend.
A few days ago, the Washington Post reported that a draft executive order has been floating around the White House that would declare a national emergency as the basis for President Trump seizing control of the midterm elections. A number of Trump's power grab moves over his first year, of course, have involved declaring bogus emergencies to be used as an excuse. So, of course, an administration desperate to find any lever it can pull to avoid midterms wipeout would consider this. This particular bogus emergency would be that because it's proposed that China has been seeking to interfere in US elections, my guess is it might have become Iran by the time this becomes official. That makes it an emergency and necessitates Trump's band of incompetents to take charge. Seize the voting machines, ban postal voting, force a short notice change to use only very specific forms of voter ID, the absence of which will likely disadvantage Democrat voters more than it will Republicans. One of the supporters of the initiative, Florida lawyer Peter Ticktin, told the Washington Post this: under the Constitution, it's the legislatures and states that really control how a state conducts its elections, and the president doesn't have any power to do that. But here we have a situation where the president is aware that there are foreign interests that are interfering in our election processes. That causes a national emergency where the president has to be able to deal with it. It doesn't seem to have occurred to him that Donald Trump interfering in US election processes might also constitute a national emergency. I mean, I bet it would have occurred to him if it had been the other side looking to pass such a measure. Trump has made reference to all of this without specifically name-checking the measure. So, for example, one of the times was last month. He posted this on social media: I have searched for depths of legal arguments not yet articulated or vetted on this subject. You personally did that? Nah, don't think so. And will be presenting an irrefutable one in the very near future. And he added, I will be presenting them shortly in the form of an executive order. An early version of the draft was obtained by the Washington Post, dated April 2025. And it says this in relation to threats to elections by foreign countries. Quote, there is now clear and compelling evidence from court cases and forensic analysis that these threats have not been mitigated, but instead have intensified. This constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States, because of course it does. You'd have to say that makes it a bit of a shame that one of the first things that the new Trump 2.0 administration did on taking office was to purge the various government officials whose job it was to seek to prevent foreign interference in US elections. Yes, indeed, this included people who were combating false online content and working on broader safeguards to protect elections from cyber attacks or attempts to disrupt voting systems. The Trump administration suggested that fighting disinformation, well, that was just an infringement on free speech. But soon, well, it's going to be a crisis, which, given the dismantling of safeguards, might even turn out to be true. But Donald Trump taking over, it's not exactly the answer to that problem, I would suggest. Now, we got an early preview of what some of this could look like at the pointy end when we saw Tulsi Gabbard accompanying the FBI to seize ballots for the 2020 election from a warehouse in Fulton County, Georgia. In the search warrant affidavits in that case, no mention was made of foreign interference. Instead, it cited issues that had previously already been explained by county officials and supported by independent reviews. But of course, it's not really about evidence. It's about provoking enough distrust in the system, particularly amongst the MAGA base, but preferably wider, that you can build reasonable support or at least acquiescence for executive action to take control in the future. Now, it should be stated for the record that Trump has been asked about this draft executive order, and he said he didn't know anything about it, which is a denial that carries approximately zero weight, because that's pretty much what he said exactly about Project 2025 before the election. For one, he spent the whole time since the election methodically implementing. And he's muttered enough random stuff about how the election should be under federal control and how the only way he can lose an election is if the other side cheats, and on and on and on. It's not exactly a subtle game of bluff and counter bluff, of 4D chess playing or whatever. Now, if we've been waiting for the last year and a bit for the moment when the constitutional crisis would finally arrive, there's a pretty good chance this would be it. Because it's not ambiguous within the Constitution of the United States that elections are administered at the state level. Congress has a limited oversight role. There is nothing to suggest that the president can just seize control of these state-run elections by declaring a bogus emergency. If the Supreme Court just ruled, as it did, that he couldn't do that in order to levy tariffs on the world, you'd think it would be even more cut and dried that he couldn't do it here, one of the areas that is most explicitly set out in the Constitution. But such objections can't exactly be counted on to dissuade Donald J. Trump from actually trying. So Senate Democrats are preparing a motion to bring the moment such a move is attempted, to force a vote and put every single senator on the record. Do they support Donald Trump seizing control of America's elections? So what would he be trying to do? Should such an executive order be made and survive the inevitable legal challenges, it would assert sweeping federal authority over how elections are run. You know, the federal government, whose agencies are now all headed by slavish loyalists to Donald Trump and who jump whenever he commands them to. So what could possibly go wrong there? They will implement a number of the measures that are in the SAVE bill that seems currently unlikely to make it through the Senate. All very short term, require hand-counted ballots, no machines, ban mail-in ballots except for a tight range of exceptions, mandate federal voter ID requirements with a very restricted range of acceptable IDs. And look, I'm a Brit. We have paper-only ballots here, and unlike California, I should say, we managed to count them very quickly after the election. We have the results known the very next day at the latest. I think some of the sacred cows on the left of all of this stuff is made heavy going of, but two qualifiers. One, we also had one side, the Conservatives, bring in voter ID rules recently. One of the leading figures, Jacob Rees-Mogg, freely admitted they did so believing it would benefit their side. And in that case, they were wrong. Turned out that older people, particularly pensioners, were the most likely to get caught out by the change of rules, also the most likely to vote Conservative. So they shot themselves in the foot. Some He's desperate not to lose control of Congress for the second 2 years of his term in office, because he knows that if he does, he will face investigations and subpoenas, likely yet another impeachment. The midterm elections are now just 8 months away. Trump's approval rating is down to minus 27%. Democrats leave the generic congressional ballots around about 5%. When you approach an election with all of these signs in place, generally the result follows exactly what you would expect it to. So, while Trump hasn't had long enough to be able to fully fix the election process, at the same time, he just can't afford to let it be fair. We already saw the first stage of this, of course, getting the GOP in the various states where it most mattered to gerrymander their electoral maps to try to squeeze out more Republican seats. Didn't entirely work out as well for them as they had expected. For example, Texas redistricting was supposed to reliably deliver an additional 5 seats, but the swing against Trump has meant some of those additional seats seem highly in contention. Meanwhile, ballot boxes. This time, well, now he's the conquering hero who sent the military in to take out the entire senior leadership of Iran, having expertly extracted Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. making big bets with the assembled forces at his command. That's something he's positively giddy on right now. This, of course, would be significantly different to either of those. The consequences for the United States, the possibility you're kicking off the final
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is nobody should be shocked that Donald Trump is trying to cheat. So much for everything being merit based, huh? That just went out the window. I thought everything was supposed to be based on merit. No, everything is based on being white and cheating. That's what it's based on. Uh, Carlette, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you, Lisa. What else is new? Devils do what devils do. Coming from a Gulf War veteran. Thank you so much for your support from my channel. Well, you know, they're going to have to cheat after this war debacle. Yeah, it may be years before they get another Republican in. Yeah, I think Donald Trump has really put the nail in the coffin for the midterms. I don't see the Republicans prevailing on this one in 2026. So, y'all, thank you so much for being here. And man, I tell you what, with all the stuff that's going on, we will never run out of material to talk about for real. That will never be happening, especially this year. So, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon, and we'll come back together again on another live. If I get more information about the new Ayatollah and what's going on with that, you know, I might come back a little later and do another live. Shalom, family.